My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Welcome back, gang. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever heard of a commercial boutique development project? Well, if you haven't, you're in for a special treat because my special guest today, zooming in from Dallas, Texas, is Iqbal Mutabanna. And Iqbal has a lot of experience in syndications, in multifamily, and development from the ground up. And today I want to take a kind of a deep dive into what a boutique development project looks like with Iqbal. So welcome to the show. Great to have you here, Iqbal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm sure this is going to be a fun conversation.
I'm having fun already, so we're off to a good start. So, Iqbal, give us a little snapshot. If we zoom out, what does your portfolio currently look like? Yeah. What's kind of your bread and butter, and where are the properties located primarily?
Sure. It's evolved a little bit over the few years. In total, we've gone through about 3,000 multifamily units, full cycle across North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. And then we kind of shrunk that portfolio, taking advantage of the market, doing well in post-COVID, immediately after post-COVID period.
Yeah.
And then after that, we shrunk and became a little bit more focused on the Texas market. So at the moment, we have about 1,200 to 1,300 units spread between Houston, Austin, and Dallas, or rather the DFW Metroplex, because Dallas-Fort Worth kind of gets lumped together.
Right.
So that's what we have in terms of existing multifamily.
How many different communities at the moment?
So there's 4, 5, about 6 communities.
Six different communities across those different markets.
Correct. 4 large ones, 2 small ones.
Okay.
And then we also have started a lot of ground up development work. That's a long lag time type of a project, mostly. So that began almost 3 years ago, and there's a few projects that are going to start coming online this year.
Oh, exciting! So how many projects do you have in development at the moment? Things are actually happening with.
Yeah, so one that just finished, one that's about to finish in the next month. Fingers crossed. As long as the weather gods keep helping there, and then 2 are in different stages of entitlement. One is almost entitled. The other one is about sort of midway through that process.
Okay, very good. So we were talking a little bit off camera, and you were telling me that your bread and butter strategy is multifamily,
right?
Syndication or development from the ground up. What's the bread and butter? It's been multifamily.
Well, it has been acquisition and syndication so far.
Yeah. Okay.
It went a little bit of a change. We used to do really solid Class C type of properties.
Yeah.
Went up to Class B, went up to Class A, started buying it directly from developers in the lease-up phase, and then realized, hey, we should be in the shoes of those developers. So that's when we started doing the development as well.
Okay, very cool. So that gives us a good snapshot of what you're up to, what you guys have been doing. It sounds like you exited nicely on some of those projects post-COVID. A lot of people have been going through a few hiccups the last few years in some of their projects. Has that affected you guys at all, Iqbal?
It absolutely has. I think with especially I think the interest rate environment is really what has affected. I think it's affected a lot of people. We are fortunate that on 2 projects we have either no debt or fixed debt at less than 3% on a 10-year note. So those are good. There are some, unfortunately, which are caught up in the variable floating rate situation. We've been trying to find all kinds of different ways to navigate those, but that's a different story.
Yeah, no, a lot of people can relate to that. That's for sure. So, Iqbal, let's talk a little bit about your boutique development projects. I think you said it's mixed use commercial. So first of all, for folks that aren't familiar with that, what does that even mean? What does boutique mixed use commercial property mean to you?
So let me just it's a great question, and that's really a word we use, and I'm sure others use. to describe when they're doing something that's a little bit different than ordinary.
Yeah.
But
But what's
to
your
a large,
version of a little bit different? That's the question.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
To a large extent, if you see multifamily, right, it tends to follow some kind of a standardized format. There's
Yeah.
suburban, garden style, multifamily. They usually all look almost the same, small variations in the elevation. To a large extent, you can predict, if you're looking at what area it is, and you know that that's the kind of development you see there. Boutique comes in when you cannot follow one of those formulaic ways of designing and building that product because of the locational specifics, right?
Hmm.
So, in some cases, the location may be such that um, what's surrounding it cannot match what you think should go there, even though it fits perfectly. And you
Hmm.
have to modify it to make it work with what's around it, right?
So
And
what would
so
be an example of that?
example,
Like,
in fact, is the fun project that I talked about. So this is a project that we're doing in a town called Rowlett, which is one of the suburbs of Dallas.
okay.
It's um, it's one of those rare suburbs in the DFW Metroplex that has gotten left behind because they had a city council for the longest time that kept thinking, we need to keep our suburbs small, we need to keep it a suburb, and
Hmm.
ignoring the fact that Dallas, Fort Worth was developing into a massive metroplex with urbanization just happening all around it. So we happen to be in that town. We happen to find a small parcel on Main Street in downtown Rowlett. When we purchased it, it was one of those strange downtowns which really didn't look like a downtown. It just looked like a street with houses on it.
Okay.
Fortunately, the city council changed. A new mayor came in. Interestingly, this mayor actually has been in local politics since he was 14 years old. And he became mayor at 18 or 19.
Oh my God.
Um,
Wow.
and interestingly, even more interestingly, he resigned. They had another mayoral election last month, or this month actually, and he resigned 3 months before that because he realized he wasn't making enough money as a 21-year-old.
As a mayor of the small
So,
town. Okay. So anyhow, you got to turn over the mayor and the
correct.
council.
And meanwhile,
And
what has happened is they brought in fresh blood. Economic Development Committee of the town changed, and they really started taking a visionary approach that if this town has to be part of DFW, has to be part of the Metroflex. What's amazing is that their downtown is actually the terminal stop of the Blue Line metro line that connects with Dallas,
hmm,
which is a slowly developing metro system in the DFW area. It's called the DART metro rail system. And they're trying to mimic, the major cities.
yeah.
Problem is DFW is very spread out, so it's much harder to do that. But they
Hmm.
were fortunate to be one of the towns that's on that rail system. And our plot of land is literally a 2-minute walk from that brand new DART station with the blue
Perfect.
line taking people directly in 20 minutes to Dallas downtown. A lot of young people have moved into Rowlett because they're finding things are affordable there compared to other
Hmm.
parts of Dallas. So it is starting to now really look and shine like a place that is in the path of progress. Unfortunately, what we have is a tiny 0.49 acre plot of land in
Okay.
downtown with a lot of restrictions on what we can and cannot do. And then, of course, we ended up with a lot of opposition from the single
The
family houses
neighbors.
all around because
Yeah.
they don't want it to change. They wanted to keep
Yeah.
looking like a suburb, like a tiny little suburb. But the town realized that it couldn't survive that way. So that's where things became boutique, right? We had to really work with the town folks, the people who surrounding areas. We had to work with the city council, the economic development authority, and come up with a concept that would actually serve multiple players and multiple interests there.
And
So we
hopefully
had
and
to
hopefully keep
negotiate.
the neighbors somewhat happy.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
Their biggest problem was, as you create a building and people peeping into their backyards. And
Yeah.
we're like, at some point, I'm sorry, that's just going to happen. It doesn't matter whether it's an office building or a multifamily building. It doesn't matter what kind of building it is.
Yeah.
So we've finally what we have now is a 3-4 building, and we were actually had to purchase a 0.2 acre land behind it just to provide parking because there just isn't enough parking in downtown.
Okay.
So this is a 3-floor building. The bottom floor is all retail. The top 2 floors are multifamily. It's actually designated as condos because technically the zoning for that area is urban village, which requires that people own their flats or their
Hmm.
apartments, as you know.
Okay.
So it's kind of a dual use thing where they understand that we will likely operate this as multifamily apartments, but it has the option built into it where we could sell off each condo apartment separately,
How many
if
units
that makes
are
sense.
there on floors 2 and 3? Like how many rental units are
Yeah,
there?
so there's a total of 28 units,
28 residential units.
residential units, and there's
Got it.
about 4,000 square feet of retail at the bottom.
Okay.
And then this becomes very interesting again because the town wanted us to make it such that a food place could be there.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, their parking requirements for food places, there was no way to meet that.
Right.
And they had not managed to update the code requirements in the city saying that if they're going to revitalize downtown, they got to try and reduce those requirements. So
Mhm.
when we went through the entire zoning and entitlement process, we came to some kind of a midway ground and said, look, there's no way we can get a restaurant here. But what we can do is we can try and get like an ice cream shop, a coffee shop,
Mm.
a sort of a mini hangout place where people can be there. And it can also serve the demography of people who are living in the apartment itself, right? Because
Yeah, well, that's smart. Keep the neighbors happy with a place to go have coffee and chit chat and that sort of
exactly,
thing, as
exactly.
well as your tenants.
Yeah, and our tenants are likely, and because of the nature of the way it is, tenants are likely to be in the millennial, young millennial, or the leading side of the Gen Z kind of
Hmm.
demographic population, right? Which really enjoys living in this kind of a slightly more denser neighborhood, walkable district. The station's right there. The library is literally 1 block away.
Nice.
Everything is, a lot of the interesting restaurants that are from the hip places of Dallas are actually finding second locations along the street.
Nice.
So it's a good place to create this mini hangout kind of possibility.
So it sounds like this has been a little bit challenging. Was this your
Right.
first development project or had you done a few before this one?
So this is my first full-time development project.
Got it. Yeah.
I started working while I was still doing a lot of acquisitions and syndications. I started working with a good friend of mine who had started his own development work in Fort Worth. So that was a pure standard multifamily, 4-floor building with a very specific style that just happens to be in that area.
Yeah.
But then he and I got together, and when we started working on this one we did not expect it to be as boutique as when we started off, but it developed to that just because when we went for those public hearings on our plans and started
Well,
getting
that's
beaten
what I was going to
down.
ask you, Iqbal, is like how long, when did you start? When did you first get the
Yeah,
property under contract?
yeah,
And how long did it take you to kind of go through the different stages of development, especially,
yeah, yeah.
the entitlement side of things, the
Right.
changing zoning and whatever was needed there? Give us
It
a
takes
kind
a
of a time.
while.
Yeah.
It takes a while. So after we purchased the property, it took us about a year to get to a point where we were ready to start, working with the city on presenting it to the public and, doing all the public hearings
Oh,
and all
really?
of that.
What
So
was going on in that year?
just doing all the initial planning work and figuring out what the civil plan would look like, where the utilities would come from, who would be paying for what, how do we ensure that we minimize the impact on ourselves, as part of that, because we were going to be hooking into the city systems, right?
Right.
And then the other part of it is, as I said, there was a turnover going on the city council as well.
Right.
So
Okay.
there was some time being lost in trying to find advocates for the project,
Yeah.
finding people who would cheerlead us within the city. Eventually, we found that person. Actually, the person who is the economic development director actually ended up being the person who presented our project on our behalf to the city council
Oh, very nice.
and
Yeah.
convinced them. We got like a full, I think it was a 7-0 vote in favor of it
You got
eventually.
unanimous approval. Well, that
Yeah,
that is fantastic. Okay, so it
right.
took about a year to go from there to starting the entitlement process. How long did the entitlement process take?
Yeah, that was about a year to year and a half. I think the whole thing end to end, from the point we purchased to the point we were able to break ground, was just about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the construction side of things, how long did that take to build out the project?
Yeah, so the construction that has been actually a slightly bigger challenge than we had expected in some ways. So we had our plan was to do it in 16 to 18 months at the most, and we are now at about 20 months. We're about going to finish. I think we probably are a month away from getting a certificate of occupancy.
Nice.
So we're almost there. But there were some challenges that we had not expected. One challenge was constructing on Main Street involves shutting down traffic on Main Street, which nobody likes.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, despite the fact that there was so much of support from the city on this project, they want to use this project as almost like a showcase on what they would like to see in the rest of downtown. Problem is the people on the ground, the city inspectors, the people who actually run the show are not happy about not about the project, but not happy with the
Yeah,
disruption
shutting
it
down
can
the street.
cause.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So we have had a very interesting time dealing with inspectors coming, out of the blue and saying, "No, stop this, everything right now, everything stops until
My
you figure
goodness.
out how you're going to, resolve so and so thing, because that's going to block one side of traffic." They wouldn't let us put cranes on one side of the main street because, they couldn't block that part. Problem is, because of the way it was situated, there was no real good way, no place to put that crane otherwise.
So
Um,
what did you do? Where did you put the crane?
well, eventually we had to basically get special booms that connected from a side street, and we had,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a lot of interesting, fun stuff happening there. Um,
A big
four
learning
days,
curve for you, Iqbal, I would imagine.
totally. 4 days before Christmas, they said, we were tying in the underground plumbing pipes to the main city plumbing. And so here's what happens. We tie it in. The fire chief comes in and says, "Great, done. You guys have passed," gives his write off. The guy who also is in charge of that in the city comes a day later and says, "All wrong. I'm not going to sign off on this." We said, "Well, fire marshal just signed off." And he's like, "Well, he shouldn't have done it without asking me." I'm like, okay. So we had to, deal with that. We had to go back to them, and they both then worked it out together. We lost, 2 days in the process. Now
Did
we're
did you have
rock.
to redo anything or did the guy back out?
We fortunately had to do very little, but we did end up with a problem where Christmas Eve, and we had to shut down water in that area, to finish
Oh,
the work because they gave us a deadline. You gotta get it done. You cannot be closing the street on Christmas Eve, and up to a day after Christmas. And of course, that ended up shutting the water for one of the neighbors who knew the mayor, was very upset about the whole thing. So, how it goes, right? It goes
yeah.
into a little
Yeah,
roundabout
yeah.
circle. But
Lots
as I
lots of stuff.
said, yeah, fun stuff.
So at the end of the day, what are the plans? You've got 4,000 square feet of retail on the bottom
Right.
floor, 28 condo units that you're going to rent out as so is this whole project a long-term build to rent hold project, or are you going to lease it up and sell it to another
Yeah, so I think more
investor?
from a strategy perspective, we prefer to be merchant builders. So we would have preferred to finish everything, lease it out, and then sell it immediately. I think in the current circumstances, there's a possibility that we may hold it for another, 2, 3 years before we sell it. It really
Mhm.
depends on where the market lands within 6 to 8 months' time.
Yeah, so
Because
assuming that you're going to hold it
yeah,
for a few years,
right.
um, what you don't have it leased out yet or anything, but what does it look like as far as a cash flowing property? You guys going to be positive on this? Does it look like it's going to be a
Yeah,
decent money maker?
yeah, it should be. It should be. I think really the biggest challenge is the retail portion. I think the multifamily part of it, the apartment condos should not be an issue. I mean, there's a very high demand there. Things don't really stay on the market for that long on the rental side.
Yeah.
Retail has been extremely strong until now. It still
Mm.
is at the moment. What makes our project a little bit challenging is the downtown location,
The
because
parking.
there's certain types of retail that will be a good fit there, and there are many types of retail will that may be a good fit but will not come there because of lack of parking.
Mm.
Because a lot of them don't have the mindset that if it's downtown, it's okay, people will park and walk.
Right.
And the assumption is you have to park right there.
Yeah.
So there are some that would be a wonderful fit. They just are not willing
They
to,
can't see it.
they
Yeah.
can't see it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the challenge for sure. And as we're wrapping this up, Iqbal, the residential units, have you got a mixture there? One bedrooms, two bedrooms,
Yeah,
studios? What do you got?
it's all ones and twos,
Hmm.
majority ones really,
Yeah. Okay.
and then a few twos. And really, the goal is not we're not really targeting families, as I said here. This is really the very young professionals, millennial, and older Gen Z, people who really want a good lifestyle, have a walkable lifestyle, who want to have everything in walking distance for them,
Yeah.
and enjoy the idea of living in a really nice, hip location with a hip apartment overlooking some beautiful, vistas there.
No, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
Iqbal, we're kind of halfway through, getting towards halfway through 2025 right now. What
yeah.
are the goals for the rest of the year? Where are you taking your company?
So I think that there are a few things that we're focusing on. One is, we have one of the projects that is almost done in entitlement, and we're trying to figure out whether that's a project that initiates development right off the bat this year itself. Do we need to wait a little bit to see how things settle? There's a lot of uncertainty both in the construction material side and labor side, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
and also on the financing side because the capital markets are still in a little bit of a flux. So, and the problem, what happens is that you can't wait too long because once you reach about October, most of the lenders start pulling back and saying, our construction buckets are done.
Right.
So either we initiate and get started before September, as in get the financing in place, or we then just hold and wait until Q1 when new buckets open up. So that's one area that we're focusing on. The second is we're trying to improve our in-house management as much as we can. Many of these projects are much smaller. So the larger projects, we typically do third-party management. These smaller projects, which are less than 50 units, we manage them in-house. So I
Hmm.
think a big part of the focus for the rest of the year is going to improve the performance of in-house management. I think we're doing a good job. We certainly cut out all the fluff that sometimes you can see with third party. But at the
Hmm.
same time, there's a lot of room for improvement as well.
Very good.
Yeah.
Iqbal, I'm sure a lot of people would like to find out more and connect with you. Where should they go?
I think the best place is LinkedIn. Just look me
Okay.
up on LinkedIn. You can look me up under Iqbal Mutabanna or Ike Mutabanna. I'm sure I'll show up in one of those and I'll answer to both.
Very good. Well, Iqbal, congratulations on getting this first boutique development deal all the way through, and now you're ready to lease it out. That's very, very exciting. You've gone through a
Appreciate it.
lot. The learning curve's been steep.
Yeah.
The frustrations have been great, and I hope the rewards are great for you as well.
I hope so as well. Thank you.
All
Appreciate it.
right, everybody. Thank you very much. Take care, and we will see you on the next episode. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com.